I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the Israeli government is now planning on expanding the mixed prayer space at the Western Wall. Tensions are high in Jerusalem following the Temple Mount attack. And we hope you're hungry because a new Israeli organization is promising the meal of a lifetime. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. The Israeli government is now planning to expand the same egalitarian prayer space at the Western Wall that was frozen from taking place last month. But here's the catch. Liberal Jewish denominations will not be in charge of the holy space. Instead, the Orthodox rabbinate will be taking the reins. Last year, a compromise to expand the mixed-gender prayer space along the Western Wall was approved, but last month it was suddenly frozen by the Israeli government following major outrage by Israel's Orthodox community. The main stickling point that led to the freeze was the language about liberal denominations controlling and administering the prayer space. The Orthodox rabbinate and Haredi parties in the government coalition saw this as an unacceptable change to the status quo. And now the government is moving forward with an expansion of the egalitarian Robinson's Arch prayer site and has already allocated more than $5 million for the upgrades. Along with that, they're requesting that the Supreme Court dismiss the case that the liberal Jewish denominations and Women of the Wall have brought to the Supreme Court. Anat Hoffman, the chairwoman of Women of the Wall, is calling for either the original agreement to be enforced or for an egalitarian section to be added to the current Western Wall plaza. She says that she's not buying the substitute agreement. Tensions are high in Jerusalem following Friday's terror attack on the Temple Mount and the Israeli decision to install new security measures around the entrances of the holy site. Israel has placed metal detectors at the Muslim-only entrances to the site of the first and second temples, as well as the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. But the move is being violently protested by the Jordanian Islamic Waqf and its followers. The Waqf has ordered Muslims to not enter the Temple Mount as long as the metal detectors are in place. But some local Muslims are ignoring the order and going to Al-Aqsa anyway. This has led to interreligious violence at the entrances to the area, and these clashes have escalated into full-blown riots with Israeli security officials. Now, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah party has called for a day of rage on Wednesday in protest. They want their followers to march toward Israeli checkpoints in the West Bank, and they're saying that Friday's prayers will be held in public squares. With this plan in mind, it seems the likelihood of violence is high. In 2015, the Israeli government claimed that Abbas's rhetoric about filthy Zionist feet desecrating Al-Aqsa helped kick off the stabbing intifada. Joining us now in the studio to take a closer look at the events following last weekend's terror attack on the Temple Mount is Brigadier General Morley, the former head of Israeli Air Force Intelligence. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, so let's begin. This metal detector issue, why were they only installed in the Muslim-only entrances to the Temple Mount?
First of all, it's a kind of a occasion, if you go to the history of what's happened in the mountain, it's go back to the time of the Romans, and then the time of the Muslims, and then the time of the Christians, and then the time of the Brits, and now Israel, the last 50 years, we control the Temple Mount. The only time in those 2,000 years that there is a free worship for all three monotheistic religions, this is the last 50 years. If you go back to the history, the Muslims did not permit the Jews to go up to the Temple Mount. If you go to the Templars, the Christians, in the Crusaders, they haven't permitted the Muslims to go to the Temple Mount.
Well, you know, there are metal detectors that are leading to the Western Wall and here in Israel, but obviously these metal detectors outside of the Temple Mount are causing a huge uproar. Why is that the case?
It's always the case of they want to underestimate the sovereignty of Israel on Temple Mount. This is the only case because the facts are differently. Every Israeli that want to get to the Wailing Wall have to go through detecting.
Right.
Every Israeli that go to the mall have to go through detecting. The only one that hadn't have it up to now are the Muslims on the Temple Mount. And what happened? The Muslims went with guns on the Temple Mount. And now we want to protect them. Most of the people in the Temple Mount are not Jews, there are few Jews, not Christians, few Christians. The vast majority of tens of thousands of people are Arabs, Muslims, and we want to protect them. And if you go back to the history, the king of the Waqf are in charge of the religion.
So let's talk a little bit about Fatah and the threats of a day of rage tomorrow. You know, how should Israel be responding to this, and also to the clashes that we're seeing at the Lion's Gate in Jerusalem?
Of course, they want to intimidate us that in Friday there will be big riots. I think differently. Yes, they are going to try to provoke. That's what they are going to do. But if you have now a direct relationship between Israel underground with the Saudi Arabians, who are the highest authority of the Muslims, the Sunni Muslims, and if all those countries, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, they don't want any riots, so I think there will be some provocation, but I believe that the next Friday will be small riots. Everyone will say that they are pushing their time and opinion. But basically,
are we going to see an impact, on the future of peace negotiations as a result of this? How will it affect the future of peace negotiations?
Yes, but we have to understand that the Temple Mount is a place that is very holy to all Muslims, not only the Israeli Palestinians. Actually, the Palestinians do not control the Temple Mount. The Waqf are under the Jordanian government. They control the Temple Mount. But what we do...
But I mean, the stabbing intifada, many Israeli officials attribute that to comments made by the Palestinian president back in 2015. So, I mean, there is... I would assume that we're going to see an impact on what we're hoping are future negotiations between the Israelis and Palestinians. But the question is, how far will that impact go? I mean, are we going to have much bigger issues than we had previous to this attack?
I believe that it won't happen. Yes, they try to provoke, they try to underestimate Israel's sovereignty on Temple Mount, but once again, the last 50 years were the most open to all three religions of free worship. It hasn't happened in the past.
Is there a way to quell the violence, to stop the violence that we're seeing right now? Is there anything that Israel can be doing to stop these clashes?
I have an idea. It's kind of a different idea, but I have an idea that we have to find alternative to the Waqf. I'm not talking a Jewish alternative. I'm talking about Muslim religion authority inside Israel, and we have to threaten the authority of the Waqf, because the Waqf, they have one objective, to underestimate and to attack Israel in all the world. So if we find, this is my advice to the government, if you find a group of authority of religion, Muslims in Israel, and give them kind of tools in order to help us to find the right solution, so the Waqf will be threatened, and maybe they will change their mind, because now they are very, very extremists. They don't have any responsibility. The only thing that they want to say the story that is different from the truth, because the Israelis are the only one who permit free worship for three monotheistic religions. This is a fact.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I guess we're going to have to put you in contact with the leaders of this country to push forward that idea.
I will do it.
All right. Thank you. All right. Vice President Mike Pence has just reiterated President Trump's campaign promises to move the American embassy to Jerusalem at a conference for Christians United for Israel. To the men and women of Christians United for Israel, this president hears you. This president stands with you. And I promise you that the day will come when President Donald Trump moves the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It's not a question of if, it's only when. This isn't the first time that Pence has made that promise, but there haven't been any actual promising moves as of yet. Just last month, the president renewed a biannual waiver started in 1995 that postpones the move, just like all of his predecessors have done since President Bill Clinton. Pence remains adamant, though, and isn't just promising that the president will make good on his word about the embassy, but that Israel's continued well-being is paramount to the American administration. Israel's been hoping for a more aggressive U.S. policy toward the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the White House certification that Iran is in compliance with the JCPOA is not a great sign, although new U.S. sanctions on Iran send a different message. ILTV's Max Keisler is here with more details on this story. Now, Max, what is the Trump administration's policy towards Iran right now?
Well, it's still being figured out. This is obviously not an administration that's friendly to Iran. They've got great ties with Israel and Saudi Arabia. On the other hand, a lot of the decision makers in the White House don't really want to take drastic action. So what we're seeing here is the middle ground. On the one hand, keeping the deal intact. On the other hand, new sanctions on the Islamic Republic.
And what is Israel's reaction to these sorts of changes that we're seeing all the time?
I think Israel's very happy to have a White House that shares their view of Iran, that this is an expansionist threat. At the same time, they'd love to see more action and not just words. I think when it comes to Syria, Iraq, the nuclear program, Israel would like to see something more than just sanctions.
Absolutely. Well, let's check out your report. Sorry.
At the last minute, the U.S. decided to continue on with the 2015 Iran deal, and it's raising questions in Jerusalem as to just how the U.S. intends to counter Iranian military expansion in the Middle East. It wasn't until Monday afternoon that the Trump administration decided to tell Congress that Iran was in compliance with the, quote, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed deep skepticism toward the Iran deal, which he has dubbed the worst deal ever, and more broadly toward the Islamic Republic of Iran, which he views as a state sponsor of terrorism. Reportedly, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson pushed Trump to certify Iranian compliance, but the president nearly called it off, just before the deadline, which would have triggered a 60-day period for Congress to reimpose heavy sanctions on Iran. Israel sees Iran as the primary threat to its security, as the Islamic Republic provides hundreds of thousands of rockets to Hezbollah in Iran and regularly threatens to destroy the state. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that the recent ceasefire in southern Syria, negotiated by the U.S. and Russia, fails to check Iranian ambitions.
It's already illegal for gay couples to adopt children here in Israel, but this week the state caused major outrage when they said that allowing same-sex couples to adopt would place a burden on the child. Now it looks like Israel's child welfare services are backtracking on that statement. On Monday, the Justice Ministry, speaking on behalf of the government, said that it opposes a petition in favor of gay adoption for two reasons. Firstly, the ministry is saying that given that the country, the Knesset, and the coalition are all divided over this issue, it must be decided in the Knesset as part of a wide public debate. Secondly, the Social Services Ministry believes that children adopted by gay couples could experience difficulties and disadvantages as a result. Now, the Social Services Ministry is backpedaling on that view, which was seen by many Knesset members as homophobic. They put out a statement saying that the language in the brief was failed language, which would have been fitting if it had not been said. But the Social Services Ministry is also saying that the policy of the office remains with no change. That's some very ambiguous language from the government. In a very big first for Israel, the Knesset on Monday has approved a law allowing the Israeli courts to demand internet service providers to block or remove websites promoting illegal or terror-related activities. ILTV's Aaron Porras is here with more on the story. Now, Aaron, give us some details. Is this, something that is going to limit net neutrality or somehow infringe on freedom of information here in Israel?
Well, as you said, I mean, this is a really big first for Israel. This is the first time that any sort of any sort of restrictions on internet access has been introduced as a law here in Israel. So as far as net neutrality or infringement on freedom of information in the internet, it really kind of remains to be seen, and that is an argument that can be made, but we'll have to wait to see what the repercussions are in the future. As for the bill itself, it seems that primarily it's aimed at taking the charges and the applicable charges in the physical real world and translating them into a language that the internet can understand.
Right, to limit this kind of terror activity on the net. Interesting. All right, well, let's turn to your report.
Passing the second and third readings in the Knesset with a vote of 63 to 10, the new censorship law is designed to target, among other things, illegal gambling sites, prostitution and child pornography ads, online drug dealing, and pages linked to terror groups. Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan said, quote, "The new law will give the police the necessary tools to fight criminals, felons, and insiders who have moved their activities online," end quote. The legislation would allow district judges with special permission to demand from internet service providers that they block or remove websites linked to criminal activities, and any ISP that doesn't comply could land in prison for up to 2 years. In response to those who cry foul, saying this law creates a slippery slope towards additional censorships, the bill provides a clause allowing any rights group to appeal decisions made by the courts. Additionally, the Justice Ministry must annually report to the Knesset how many requests for restrictions were filed and for what crimes.
One of the greatest common languages we have in this world is dance. Well, here in Israel, there's an annual event that lets people from all over the globe interact and communicate through dance to their heart's content. And it's held by the Suzanne Delal Center, which is perhaps Israel's greatest home for dance. Let's check it out. Joining us now is Yair Vardi, the CEO of the Suzanne Delal Center for Dance and Theater. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now,
having me here.
Yeah, for those of our viewers who don't know, Suzanne Delal is the center
of dance
to dance here in Israel, and home to Bat Sheva, one of the most famous dance groups in the world as well.
Great honor.
So tell us a little bit about the Tel Aviv Dance Festival to begin.
Well, it's a festival that started in 2007. With the Israeli opera, and then we stay alone, Suzanne Delal, and it's our annual international dance festival. We're inviting as many as possible companies from around the world, maybe Germany, maybe Sweden, Belgium, China, wherever, and we choose to bring the best currently within the dance world, with Israeli dance company, as we see, with Bat Sheva, with the Kibbutz, with the Ban Pinter, with premieres, with all the young artists. So it's a wonderful gathering of contemporary dance in its best, and it's always exciting to build it up and to make it possible.
And it's so amazing that it's also here in Israel, because I don't think people necessarily think about Israel as the center.
Yes, but Israel now it's a place for dance. Israeli dance is well known around the world. We have 160 people coming every year to choose Israeli dance to take it around the world. So this is part of it, which is great. I mean, we are.
And that takes place in Suzanne Delal.
Yes, all in Suzanne Delal. This is the center for dance in Israel, which is wonderful.
Interesting. So why do you think that Israel has kind of risen up when it comes to dance?
I don't know. It's a wonderful question. I mean, everybody asks it, but I have no answer on that. I think it's this energy, the sex appeal of dance, the Israeli people, the energy. We are alone around, so we have to be the best. And dance is one of the methods of portraying all these wonderful things within us. I think it's a quality and it's a quantity of gathering of information, body information, and to give it to the world. And we are very good at it. I mean, but I can't pinpoint exactly why it's happened.
Right.
It's grew up in 30 years. We have a center. Center helps it. I mean, to give it a place to dance. We have stages, 3 stages, 4 stages. So we can do as much as we want and what we want, which is very important.
How long has this event specifically been taking place?
Tel Aviv Dance has been going on for 10 years, but before that we have Dance Europa for 7 years. So it's a combination. It's growing up all the time, and it's getting longer. It's in 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 7 weeks, 9 weeks. 12 weeks?
You know, it's funny, I was just thinking, you know, the world may, now that's changing like you said, but the world may not have initially seen Israel as a center of dance or a dance country per se, but you know, Rikudim, Jewish dance has been something, a part of our history for such a long time, these group dances.
It's the first art form exists, actually,
right.
Dance, absolutely.
Absolutely, and here in Israel as well, I mean, most Jewish communities around the world take part in some type of folk Jewish dance.
But this is Israeli dance, it's not Jewish dance. It's Israeli dance, it's something different. It's coming from the current situation of Israel and the people of Israel.
Right. Well, exactly. There is a difference.
It's very strong. It's very different. It's very.
When and where can we go see a show?
Well, it will start in August 1st and it will finish in October 31st. So 3 full months. Every night there is a show. Maybe Israeli shows, maybe from abroad. So you're welcome anytime to see any show that you chose. I mean, there's so much to choose from: political, love, romantic, anything, which is great. So
we're running out of time, but my last question for you is, what right now is the most popular dance form here in Israel?
Contemporary.
Contemporary. Okay, so 100% our audience should check out this incredible dance center, and thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Yair. All right, guys, the 20th annual Maccabiah Games have finally come to an end, and participants from across the world all agree that it was a great experience, from the food to the camaraderie. The Jewish Olympics bring in thousands of athletes from the Jewish diaspora from all 4 corners of the world every 4 years. Last night, the closing ceremony for the Games was a star-studded affair, with even Israeli supermodel Bar Rafaeli hosting the event. The crowd was enthralled by the fireworks, the dancers and light show, and the Israeli covers of pop hits like Uptown Funk. Unsurprisingly, Israel and the United States were the big winners at the Games, but the Cuban Jews did bring home a bronze medal, and the Hungarian Jews got 2 golds. Olympic gold medalist and swimmer Jason Lezak joined Team USA as a Maccabi ambassador, and he's had an emotional experience at the event.
The together part comes as your country, but then the together part comes as the people here as a whole. We're all Jewish people, and I think a lot of people realize that and celebrate that. And even though they're competing, they're still meeting great friends for life. And to be able to compete only against Jewish athletes makes it really special.
All right, if you really want to get to know Israel, you should probably start with the food. And no, not restaurant food, home-cooked food. Well, now a new organization in Israel has the key to making sure you get an authentic taste of this country by inviting you into the kitchens of local Israelis. And ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh has the scoop. Hi, Emmanuel.
Hi. Okay, so the recently launched Bitzavta, which translates to Together, is kind of a program organizing dinners with travelers and local Israelis to bring them into their homes and kind of share, you know, the culture. Whenever I travel, the first thing I think about is that I want to taste the food and kind of get to know the culture.
Well, and you know, oftentimes when you're traveling, you don't know people on the ground, so you end up just eating restaurant food and not really getting going into somebody's home and experiencing what the day-to-day life would be like.
So. And asking them questions about the culture, like just getting to know the city a little bit better.
Really cool. Well, let's check out your report. But I mean, I know I really want to try this out just during my travels to other countries. So maybe we'll have to spread this.
Imagine coming to the Holy Land and being a guest at the dinner table of some new Israeli friends, getting to know more about the delicious food and culture. Well, a new online initiative called Bitzavta does just that. Quote, the host prepares a home-cooked meal that allows the traveler to taste Israeli homemade dishes and get an impression of what a real Israeli dining table looks like. Meanwhile, travelers get to experience the immense variety of Israeli cuisine. The Israeli hosts get the opportunity to meet new people and introduce them to an authentic side of Israel. The 2 founders, Ori Peral at 31 and Niv Saar, 29, met as officers in the IDF Intelligence Corps, and after their traditional post-army travels, began working as software engineers. The idea for Bitzavta came from their memories abroad. Peral says the thing they remembered most from their travels was the time they spent talking to the locals. The self-funded Bitzavta is still in beta mode and so far has 20 active hosts in Israel. And it's organized dinners for guests from places like Japan, Switzerland, China, Russia, and the United States. After all, what's better than sharing a meal with new friends at home? Who knows, maybe next time these new friends will invite you to their house for a meal.
Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Speaking of a traditional Israeli home-cooked dinner, there is one word that will help all of you future travelers out there get around the food scene here in Israel. Our word for today is arucha, which means meal in Hebrew. Now, Emmanuel, what's your favorite arucha?
Okay, well, everyone knows that aruchat boker, or breakfast, is the most important meal of the day. But if we're being honest, I think my favorite arucha would have to be, you know, post-dinner, pre-bedtime arucha. So snack.
Yes,
it's really...
I agree with you. It's a problem that I face too. But you know, like, I think that here in Israel, we could say aruchat boker is an important meal, and you could also say aruchat erev is an important meal, but the most important arucha would be aruchat shishi, right?
Aruchat shishi, Friday night dinner, Shabbat dinner, you know, you gather with your family and everyone has some time to relax. I personally didn't grow up doing aruchat shishi. I never really did that until I moved to Israel.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I mean, I also, okay, to be fair, we did have aruchat shishi once in a while, and now I'm really trying to incorporate it more into my life here because it's an important time to be with your family and your friends. You sit down, it's home-cooked food, and I think we spend too much time eating out here in Israel. It's kind of a problem we all have.
It's funny, I can actually really see you cooking a home-cooked meal for some travelers coming to Israel. And I'll definitely have to join that dinner, so let me know when that happens.
All right, well, now that Emmanuel has promises to our guests, I can't promise anything, but let's check out the weather to see if it's even worth you coming here this week.
Exactly.
All right, tonight will be partly cloudy with a low of 77 or 25 degrees Celsius. And tomorrow you can expect partly cloudy skies with an additional drop in temperatures to a high of around 90 or 31 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.58 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchak, and thanks for watching.